Welcome to Linda's Corner. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about developing confidence through physical fitness. And I'm so excited to have special guest Kasey Smith with me today. Kasey is a mom of 3. She is also a business owner, competitive powerlifter, aspiring medical sonographer, avid horsewoman, and dessert connoisseur. After retiring from 11 years of fitness coaching, she went full-time into social media marketing, content creation, community outreach, and collaboration projects. And she is an ultrasound technician in her family's studio called Kicks and Giggles. Kasey strives to make the world a better place by encouraging education, personal growth, and leading with love. Welcome, Kasey. Thank you so much for joining with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm delighted. So you are a competitive powerlifter and a fitness coach. What led you to start weightlifting?
Well, it's really a long story, and I don't know that it had one particular event, but really like about the 10 years I started, like before I actually started lifting, it kind of started building up to that. So, I've always struggled with self-confidence. Even as a little kid, I remember being very self-conscious about how I looked and feeling like I was too skinny and feeling like very competitive. Like I always had someone to impress and I had to be the best. And it was a cause of a lot of anxiety for me. So I was growing up with that. And then when I was 15, we moved from Florida, where I'd grown up, to Utah, and I felt even more out of place. And everyone in my school had known each other for like generations. It was just, a really tightly knit community. And so I was definitely the outsider. And so basically this led me to join the swim team and then get in a relationship. Because I needed a community. I needed a person and a friend. And it's just kind of funny to me now because those two things were very much kind of pulling me in the opposite directions. Like swim team on one hand, it was really, really good for me, really good for my personal growth. My coach was amazing and he would push me out of my comfort zone and really instilled that love for physical fitness. And for the first time, I started to really feel strong and athletic. And that was big for me. But then my relationship, on the other hand, was kind of the opposite. And it was constantly challenging my confidence and my abilities and tearing me down. And after about 3 years of that, I was really having a hard time knowing which way was up. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and everything that I wanted to pursue just felt really out of reach for me. It was too big and I was not enough to chase it. So I felt like I just had to kind of play small and that my life would be okay, but mediocre, and so during this time, I was still swimming and running and trying to do a few workouts at the gym because I held on to that fitness. It really kept me afloat through everything, and it was some much needed me time. And then it was shortly after my second year of college where I started dating my husband, and that was a much healthier relationship, but it was also very emotionally tumultuous. And so, I personally was struggling a lot with confidence and in my emotions at that point as well. And it was a lot of, dating and breaking up and dating and breaking up. And I'm trying to find myself through all of it. And, shortly after getting married, I felt like, if I could just look good, if I could be awesome on the outside, then it would fix everything I had gone through over the last 4 or 5 years. So I talked to my husband, and I decided to pick up personal training and work with a trainer. So,
and that's when the training began. So let's go back a little bit, because some of the things that you talk about are so universal. The idea of feeling like you're not good enough, and the idea of wanting to fit in. I don't think there's anybody listening, anybody who is even not listening, who hasn't felt those core desires. And it's interesting. You went through a couple different things to try to fill those needs. And one of them was through the physical fitness, through your swimming. And the other one was through a relationship, which unfortunately turned out to be not a positive thing for you. And I'm very sorry.
Right.
But it's interesting also that even when you were able to have a good person that you could have a good relationship with, until you were able to work on yourself, even that relationship still struggled. And so yes. I think sometimes we're hoping for someone on the outside to fix us. Like, man, if I just found the right person, then the right boyfriend or the right husband or the right whatever, then my life would be perfect. Or if I, like you said, if I looked like this, then I would be perfect. But even in that one, it still comes from the inside. But some of the amazing things that you have done by going to that physical fitness, some people think that our physical and our mental and our emotional, they're all totally separate entities. Like you put it in a bento box and things don't touch. And the reality is they are all interrelated. And everything that you do when you're going to the gym and you're working out and you're working toward a goal helps everything on the inside. It helps you feel like, hey, I can accomplish things. I can set a goal and I can do it. And I have discipline and I have power and I have whatever. So I love the idea of working through physical fitness to help with emotional and mental things. I think it is a great route, a wonderful way to go. Okay, so let's get back to your story. So you got your trainer, and then all of a sudden everything just went smooth. It was so easy, right?
Well, of course. Oh, wait, no, it wasn't. So I started, and, when I went into this, I had been writing workout plans for friends for a couple years and everything like that. But really, I was very, I guess, new and kind of naive to the world of fitness at that time. And so when I walked into the gym, I almost turned around and walked out. I was like, no, this is not going to work. Because I go in and I'm expecting, like a Gold's Gym. You go in, there's all the machines, there's the treadmills and everything like that. No, it was a warehouse. I couldn't even find it at first. And I go in and there's like some squat racks and some barbells. There's a dumbbell rack, which is like the only thing I recognized. And like some other odds and ends, but I really was like, there's no equipment here. What am I going to do? This is not my scene. This is like for boys, And I was terrified. And the trainer, he put me through like an introductory workout, and I couldn't even do it. He was like, okay, now, pull this thing over here. And I couldn't move it. And he's like, oh, just, try harder. And so he kept lowering weight. And finally I was able to do what he was asking me to do. And I was just like, oh my word, this is so embarrassing. And, but there was kind of something in me that was like, that was really new and exciting and challenging. And so I was like, well, and obviously I wasn't very confident at this point, so I couldn't say no to an authority figure. So I was like, okay, I'll sign up. I'll be here at 5 a.m.
Wow. So in this case, I guess that turned out to be a good thing.
Right. So it ended up working in my favor. I needed it. And like after every workout, I was doing things that really challenged me and terrified me. But then I was able to do them on my level. He helped me find where I needed to be and helped me work on my skills. And these were skills that I had never even considered in the physical realm. And I liked it. And it was really cool to me to watch my body accomplish these things. And, like something as simple as jumping on a 12-inch box. When I saw that box, he told me to jump on it with both feet at the same time, I was like, you want me to what? Do I look like Michael Jordan to you? It was so scary. But then I was able to do it. And eventually 20 inches became standard and 24. And I've gotten to a point where I can jump up to a 36-inch box, which is up to my chest, And so it was really exciting for me to start moving my body in new ways and accomplishing new skills and doing things I really never saw myself doing. It was really exhilarating.
That is awesome. And you have measurements, so it's like 12 inches and 20, and you could see your progress. It's like, hey, yes. I am getting better. I am getting stronger. I can do something that I wasn't able to do before. So that's got to feel good.
Oh, absolutely. The progress became something I could physically look at, and that was a big deal for me.
Something measurable. And then having that accountability of a coach, I think is brilliant.
Yes.
Sometimes it's really helpful to have somebody else on the outside to be able to be accountable to, because, we want to give up, and having somebody else to be accountable to helps us keep going. And I assume that's probably why you became a coach, so that you could help other people do that kind of thing. So do you want to talk about coaching and what kind of changes have you seen in other people?
It's crazy. I was able to see so many lives change. And in ways, obviously people were getting in better shape. They were losing weight. But they were changing in ways that were just unprecedented for them and for me. And they would come in and they would tell me, I'm getting divorced, or I am starting a new career, or they were just basically they were finding the courage in themselves to make these big jumps that they've been wanting to make for years and just never really knew how. And I feel like once they started training, they started seeing what they were capable of, and it really changed how they saw themselves. And then they started making other decisions in their lives, in the peripherals, in their relationships, their careers, their families, their personal health and development, that really started accelerating their progress and their success. And
right.
It all started when they were able to see how strong they really were physically.
Right. And we absolutely have got to start somewhere. And that's just such a perfect place to start. That idea of feeling powerful instead of feeling helpless. Like, I can't do this. I can't do this. But to say, I can.
Yes.
So
yes,
that is...
I can do this. I can do this, and it starts small, and they see the changes happening, and it feeds itself.
That is awesome. And I'm so glad that you were able to face your fears and to be able to overcome those fears and to be able to become the kind of person that you always could have been. Everything, all the ingredients were inside. It just needed that little spark, that little kickstart to say, I can totally do this. And I think everything comes from the inside out. But in order to get into our heads, sometimes we have to work through our bodies. And that's awesome. They're connected. Yeah. If they're not connected, you are decapitated, and that's a bad thing. So they are connected, our bodies and our heads. So
yes, very much. That's what we want.
Totally. All right. So now you have made some changes, some career changes in your life. You went through this for 11 years of being able to help people to just become themselves and recognize the power that was already inside of them. But then you were able to move on to other things and still feel that power and that confidence. And so you were able to take these lessons learned in the gym and apply them to every aspect of your life. So do you want to talk about that process of change and what made you go away from becoming a fitness instructor to now you're working in doing ultrasounds?
Yes. So that was I think this is probably one of the biggest times of growth for me personally. And it definitely wouldn't have been possible without starting with the fitness and coaching. Like, it's easy to look at things and be like, oh yeah, that wasn't for me. That wasn't, my life's mission or whatever you want to call it. And feel like you would have been better if you had just skipped that part and gotten straight to where you are now. But it wouldn't have been possible, and so it was interesting that after moving from northern Utah to southern Utah, I took some time off for a while from coaching to, get my house in order and everything like that. And I was kind of like, you know what? This is kind of nice. I kind of like not being in the scene anymore. But then, I would pick up little odd jobs for friends and family. And I was like, you know what? I should just relaunch my coaching and do everything like that. Even though I had started to kind of feel like that chapter was over, I wasn't ready to let it go. I still had my identity very much tied up in being a coach and being the fitness expert. And I wasn't sure who I would be without it, if people would still think I was interesting or cool, or, it was who I was, and I wasn't sure who I'd be without it. So I couldn't let it go, even though it was starting to nag at me, just that was over,
And part of that change, I think, came when you became a mom, and you have other additional responsibilities, and you're trying to balance having a family with having maybe a career. And when your identity is connected into one thing, it can be very challenging to try to redirect and be another thing.
Okay.
And I think our bodies change so much when we become a mom. I mean, when you're concerned about looking fantastic, can I just say pregnancy does not enhance that goal, nor does recovering from pregnancy enhance that goal. And it can help people. I mean, it can not help people, but make people feel like if my identity is based on my appearance, I have no value anymore. I'm over. I remember after my first child was born, and he was a C-section, and so I had scars and crud, and I was laying in the tub, and I looked at my floppy tummy, and I thought, that is the ugliest thing I have ever seen, and it's me. And I just started crying. I thought, I don't want to be like this. I want to be cute and thin, and it was a hard thing. It was a really hard thing.
Yeah, and like I trained through my first two pregnancies. I actually was taking clients until the day I gave birth, and working out as well. But I felt enormous pressure during pregnancy, and then right after too. I had to snap back. I had to lose that weight. I had to show everyone they could do it, and I did, and I felt very proud of myself. But the pressure, it was just so, like you were saying, my identity was wrapped up in it, and I was so obsessed with trying to break that belief that once you have kids, your body is just floppy and ruined and everything. I was like, I've got to lose the weight, I've got to do it in a month, I've got to have my six-pack, and it was exhausting for me, and I do think that contributed largely to it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then you were able to kind of figure it out and turn it around and maybe not necessarily change your identity, but expand it. So I am this and I am this, and it's good.
Yeah. And that worked for a while, and it was, as I started training again, I started like, okay, instead of just working with the general population and getting people super fit, I want to work with moms. I want to help them learn how to strike a balance between their fitness and their motherhood, like that you don't have to have one or the other. And so that kind of became my thing. I was definitely feeling the resistance at this point, and I just felt like I consistently needed more. I needed to just focus on an audience. I needed more guidance and more passion and more projects. And and that would reignite the spark I had for coaching. And I started going down that road. I started hiring business coaches and investing way too much time and energy and money into it, because I just thought, if I pour myself into this even more, if I use energy I don't have, then it's going to give me more passion for it. And looking back now, I'm like, better, but I wasn't ready. Like I said, I wasn't ready to let it go, and I really tried, and that was scary for me. I had worked through a lot of confidence building at this point, but I am certainly not perfect. And I just was very, very frightened of how I would feel about myself if I didn't define myself as a fitness coach. Mm-hmm. And so that was, I think that was holding me back a lot. So after just leveraging everything I had into this, I did get pregnant again, and worked through that pregnancy and coached through it. And I was also doing a mobile concierge ultrasound service at that time. So I go to people's homes. I would work all day on fitness. My husband would get home in the evenings. I would go out and do 1 or 2 appointments after that. It was long days. I was very pregnant and I was very tired. And after having my baby, I was finally like, okay, this gives me a chance to step back. I can now reflect. I can decide what I really want for myself. And, I kind of allowed myself at that point to have no expectations. I had just had a baby. I'm not going to lose the weight fast. I'm not going to jump right back into competing. I'm not going to force myself to take on any clients. This is my recovery time. And this period, when I finally allowed myself that kind of vulnerability, it changed everying. I took a month or 2 off, and I was able to finally commit. I was like, I'm not going to do fitness anymore. It's no longer serving me. And this is, I had found a huge passion for my ultrasound service at that time. It was growing. This was during COVID, right? A couple months after everything had shut down. And that business was growing. There was a huge demand and a huge service I was able to provide there, and it filled me. And I noticed that even after, I'd work on my fitness stuff for 10 hours a day, I would be exhausted. And then I would go out and do ultrasound, and I would come back and felt alive. And I would just chat my husband's ear off the whole time about the people I was with and the babies I was seeing. And it just lit up my world. And I was like, wow, this is where I need to be now. This is where life is pulling me. And I had a passion for it,
And that makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
And you were able to enjoy. That's interesting. Were you able to recognize when you were doing it that this drains me and this fulfills me, or was that not a conscious recognition yet at that point?
I think it was. I didn't want to admit it, but I would just sit there in front of my computer and just dread it. And, and I was just like, oh, I am, there's part of my mind that was saying, just step back. And then the other part of my mind was saying, no, you're not a quitter. You just have to grind through this and then it'll all work out. And
right.
And I think we're told so many times, when you face the resistance, you just got to keep going and you got to tough it out and things will get better. And sometimes that's true, but there's a difference. And I think it takes a pretty significant level of self-awareness to distinguish between the two.
Oh, well done. So once you can reach that self-awareness, because the idea of pushing through something is very valuable, but it should be in something that we find joy in. So when we can combine that, the interest and the passion and the working through, we got to start somewhere. But I think that idea of awareness and paying attention, what makes me happy? What brings me joy? I think those things can be helpful when we're trying to find our path because, I don't know, sometimes we think we know where we should be and we make a decision and then we find out, you know what? I think it's time for a little course correction. I don't think this is the right spot. And I loved how you said in the beginning or in the middle that, just because you've been through a something and it wasn't the maybe end goal, that it totally had value and it was absolutely necessary step. Like I can't drive from, say, California to New York without going through all the states in between. And yes, if you're going to go, you got to go. So that is super awesome.
Yeah. And I think that's a really valuable thing. Like, one of my biggest fears is failure. And I think we need to really kind of change the way we see failure. We see it as people, who give up and who don't care. And you ultimately won't go anywhere if you fail. And that is so not true. And so I was so terrified that if I failed at fitness, then, I would just become another statistic. Right. Oh yes, most people can't make it in the industry and most people will just give it up. And, I was like, I'm not a quitter. That is very much not in my nature. I am the kind of person that says, when I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, even if nobody believes I will. And so, to step back from that, it kind of went against everything in my nature. But I had to really be honest with myself and say, this is no longer serving me. I no longer feel that spark or that drive. And, it's this chapter of my life is over. And it's not that I failed. It's that it just...
What about that you graduated?
Sorry, what was that?
Instead of saying failed, what if you graduated?
Yes. Graduated or like I said, redirect, it's like, oh, this isn't where I need to be anymore. I'm going somewhere else, and I haven't failed. It's not like I'm sitting in a gutter somewhere hating my life. I am thriving more than I ever have. And it's because I allowed myself, on my own recognizance to close the door on something. Mm-hmm. And move on to something else.
That is excellent.
It's maybe a failure, but it's failing forward. It's like you said, you can't get from here to New York without driving through everything else. Right. I couldn't get where I am now without first learning the skills I needed to.
Absolutely. And I think there's more than one way to learn that skill set. And I would imagine that all of the skills, your determination, your passion, your setting goals and reaching them, you're pushing forward, you're doing hard things and learning how to do new things, every single thing that you learned while you were jumping from a 12-inch box to a 20-inch box, all of those skills are now transferring into everything else that you're doing. And I would also imagine that things like fitness still matter to you. I mean, you look fantastic. So I think it's just finding that balance of being able to say, yes, this still matters, but it's so okay if it's a sideline and not my focus.
Yes, exactly. And that was the thing, like, I had noticed that even my own personal workouts just felt like a drag all the time. I wanted nothing to do with fitness anymore. But when I started working out just for me, not to look good for a job or not with the added responsibility of other people's programming and everything, I started to love it again. And again, stepping back from the pressure and everything I felt like I had to be in one role, it's brought like a new appreciation of my own workouts. They're just for me because I enjoy doing them and I like taking care of my body with no other stipulations. Yeah. It's a healthier perspective, I'm sure.
For sure, because it does matter. It does matter. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm so proud of you for all of the things you've been able to accomplish. I'm so happy for all of your successes and for all the things. And I appreciate that you're willing to share and pay it forward, because I can just imagine so many people at all of these different stages and all of these different desires and how much that will help benefit them as well.
Of course. Thank you so much.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Arnold Schwarzenegger. He said, "Strength does not come from winning. Your struggles develop your strengths. When you go through hardships and decide not to surrender, that is strength." Today, I invite you to develop your strengths, both physical and emotional, by refusing to surrender. See you next time on Linda's Corner.